I'm really excited about this video I just watched. I want to share it with you because it's about women overcoming challenges in business. And specifically, it's 5 women entrepreneurs sharing their success secrets. And I'm going to comment as well on some of the things that really stood out to me.
Inspiration can come from any direction. But how do you take that new concept and make it a reality? In advance of the Inc. Women's Summit, I'm meeting up with some of my favorite entrepreneurs to talk about what empowers them on a daily basis.
You have all created businesses from out-of-the-box thinking. What made you veer left when everybody else was going right? Bobby.
When I moved to New York, it was the 80s and everyone was doing the, over made up contour look. I know it's back. I still don't like contour. So I would make up the models to make them look like they weren't wearing makeup, and that was my calling card. But there was no...
I love this. I always wondered about Bobbi Brown. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. I'm guessing most of you have heard of her if you wear makeup or into makeup. And she was one of the first who came out with more of the natural look, or the, I don't have makeup on at all look. And it was at a time when that wasn't very popular. It was kind of like, I think it was like as we were sliding through the 90s, right, that became more popular. But she was definitely on the leading edge. And as entrepreneurs, I think it's often challenging to be the first one, or you get an idea, you get a download and you think, wow, that's crazy. Should I run with that idea? And then you don't. And then like a couple months later or a year later, you see someone else has already taken off with it. This shows up in the book industry all the time, and it's something I didn't know about the book publishing world, but as I got more into it and as I was publishing my own books, I started to notice that there'd be a pile of books that seemed kind of the same coming out at the same time, and I would think, how is that possible? In fact, publishing agencies will tell you that they'll get a bunch of ideas at the same time. You could talk about the collective consciousness or kind of how ideas are floating around. But the reason I'm saying this is because these women were willing to do the thing that no one else was doing at the time. I'm sure other people had the idea of, like Bobbi Brown, like having kind of that makeup-free look and still looking professional, but they didn't run with it, and she did. So I find that very interesting because this whole, like all of these women entrepreneurs stepped into something that seemed ahead of their time. And it's encouraging for all of us to think about, it's inspiring for all of us to think, what are those ideas that are downloading right now that we could or should be running with?
But there was no makeup available that allowed you to do that. I met a chemist one day at a shoot and I said, I can't find a lipstick that didn't smell, wasn't greasy, and I wanted to match lips. Then I realized, wow, this is something.
For me, entrepreneurship, it wasn't something that I aspired to. I always wanted to be an inventor. If I can be the perfect balance between Beyonce and Bill Nye the Science Guy every single day, now.
I love that, Bill Nye the Science Guy and Beyonce. That is quite a combination, and I love what she's doing with her company.
Now we're installing our technologies around different countries in emerging markets, turning everything from floors and roads to baby strollers into energy generating solutions.
I want to know how Jessica had the idea, right, to create a baby stroller that generates energy. I love that. So again, she's someone who, as the ideas have come in, she's had the courage to just really run with them. And so often in business, we hold ourselves back when that idea or that opportunity or that risk is right in front of us. And every single one of these women have done that. They've seen the idea, they've seen the opportunity, and they've seized it.
You guys both touched on this idea of identifying problems that existed in your life and looking at ways that you could shape an industry rather than looking at the industry itself. I started a fashion technology company with my co-founder. We had no fashion or technology experience. We knew what it meant to buy a dress for $1,000, wear it once, and then be photographed on social media and feel like you could never wear it again.
Right.
So we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Renting dresses made sense. If you thought too far down the road, it could be easy to find all the why nots versus the how can you make this happen.
First of all, what a cool idea, renting dresses, right? Renting clothes. I mean, I know there are people that this is probably more important than to me. Like, I'm cool with wearing something multiple times. I don't really care. But I know for a lot of people who, maybe they're influencers or their whole brand is really about fashion or looking a certain way every time they're on social media. This is critical. And so what a phenomenal idea. And she also talks about, it's just like what can you do to make this happen? Like just jumping in, like you get the idea, and again, she ran with it. She and her co-founder ran with it, and obviously it's been a great success.
I want to hear Angela's story, talking about how you are helping young entrepreneurs.
So I started New Me, which is an accelerator for minorities, in 2011. We focus only on the technology industry, which at the time, it was young, technical, white guys club. I did not really start New Me as a business. It was a problem that I wanted to solve, and I thought it was gonna be like a one-time project.
What do you see is standing in between these women and the dollars that you know they need to succeed?
When I work with men, they are not scared to ask for money, even if what they are working on is mediocre.
But this is so interesting that, men aren't afraid to ask for money, but women are, even if their idea is mediocre. And I see this show up a lot in the world of sales and selling, where women are afraid to ask for the sale, to close the sale, or to ask for what they're worth. And a lot of time is spent with our clients working on their beliefs about how much they can charge. Like, I just thinking of a client off the top of my head, she just raised her prices from about $50,000 per engagement to $100,000. Like, she doubled her prices to $150,000 per engagement, like, and tripled in some cases what she's asking for. And once she did it, it was like she grew 2 inches. She stood taller. She remembered the value of what she offers, and it just shifted the whole way she was doing business. And so this really resonates because I see it over and over again. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Like, if this shows up for you, like, have you ever been afraid of raising your prices? Have you ever been afraid of asking for what you're worth? Have you ever stopped? Because that's one of the main reasons I believe that women business owners don't make it over the 7-figure mark as much as men do. In fact, statistically, many studies say that only 3% of women business owners make it over the 7-figure mark. And I think it's a lot of this fear of asking for what we're worth, or asking for funds to grow a business.
For money, even if what they are working on is mediocre. But women can have something phenomenal, but it's like we hold ourselves back. So a lot of the work that I do, in particular with women, is confidence building, is getting them comfortable with asking for the money.
Priya, I want to talk about the impact you are having on actual people, helping them create wealth in a way that they've never even thought of before.
Historically, financial planning has been reserved for the wealthy. And when I was working on Wall Street, my clients were old and rich, and all of my friends at the same time were wondering, where do we go for the answers? There is this completely underserved, kind of ignored demographic that we call Henrys, high earners, not rich yet.
I so often hear young women say, I just want to be paid what I'm worth, but I don't even know what that means. And I very rarely hear young women say, I want to make a lot of money, right? It's as if we all sort of internalize this idea that the budget's not there.
Research show that men are 4 times more likely than women to ask. So it's stash wealth, salary negotiations come up. Set it as a goal though, and it has to be a very concrete goal. Like, I want to buy a $250,000 house in 3 years. So I want to get a raise, and let's back into what you.
So again, she's talking about the power in asking and not being afraid to ask. And across the board, women having confidence in this area of not only, if they own their own business, how much they're charging, but if they're working for a corporation, how much are they, what's their salary and how much are they negotiating? When I look back at my own career trajectory, I remember my first job was making $24,000 a year plus commission. My first job in the corporate world, not retail, but corporate. And I remember thinking that was so much money. It was like winning the lottery, coming out of, I had college loans to pay. It just seemed like so much money that I could make as much as $50,000 a year. And then I started to pay attention. And I was always listening, and I was always asking questions. And I realized that even though I thought I was making a lot of money, I wasn't making as much as my male counterparts or even some of my female counterparts. And I remember saying to my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, I'm going to make 6 figures. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know I'm going to make 6 figures as fast as I can. And by the time I was 24 years old, I was making 6 figures a year. And I don't know, there was no one that spoke that confidence into me. I'm like trying to think other than my mom, definitely my biggest cheerleader, but she wasn't making that much money. She was a nurse, probably an underpaid nurse. But she always said to me, she's like, you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want. And what I looked at was, not only was I doing as well as my counterparts, male or female, I was doing better. I was outperforming them, and I knew that was worth something to the company. And so rather than looking at small increments of income, I started to ask for pretty large pay raises. And after that, I started to write my own compensation plans because I was in sales and then I was in management. And in management, I wanted to get paid on everyone's success, right? I had a sales team. And so I would write my own comp plans without my managers really knowing how much we were going to sell. And then we would just go out and crush it. We would just crush our sales. And I remember getting my first $50,000 commission check and thinking like, oh my gosh, this was twice as much as my first salary, right? And so I'm sharing that with you because we can write our own comp plans, whether you're in a corporation working for someone else, or if you have your own company, it's even easier. But start to think, how much money do I really want to make? And once you get clear on that, start to take the steps so that you will get paid that much.
Back into what you need to do today to be on track.
The flip side that millennials have to be very careful of is entitlement. For example, one kid said, I feel like I really need to make X. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. For this job, if you do all of this research, this is the highest you could get paid. And he's like, yeah, I didn't really think about what the job was. I just kind of thought, New York. What are you saying?
I don't think women talk about comp and salary.
That's funny. Actually, I want to comment on that because it's kind of like what I just said. I believed that I was entitled to a certain amount of money. And I'm not a millennial, Gen Xer right here. I'm a Gen Xer, and we're kind of the forgotten generation. No one talks about us anymore. There's the boomer generation and there's millennials, but then there's the Gen Xers in between. Anyway, we kind of came from the school of hard knocks and you have to work really hard. But I think also we came from the notion that if we delivered, we should be paid for that. And so I disagree a little bit with what she's saying. I get it. Like if someone's coming to work for me and they're demanding a certain salary, I might be like, hey, like I can only pay a certain amount. And that's fine. But that doesn't mean that person can't go somewhere else and make the amount of money they want to make. And I don't know if that's entitlement or if that's a belief that they're holding, that they're worth a certain amount and that they're confident in their belief in what they're worth, which I think is really powerful. So I hope you enjoyed what those CEOs had to say as much as I did. Super inspiring, super powerful. And stick with me because we're going to go from super inspiring, super powerful to Michael Scott teaching the fundamentals of business. And remember, your 2X is waiting for you too.